What's up and welcome to My Point of View. I am your fat and opinionated host, and I don't know about you all, but it's been really interesting for me seeing all the people who have been commentating and covering this Kohberger and the Idaho 4 case. Of course, you have me and various YouTubers who have been covering this case, but over in the more mainstream area, we've had Nancy Grace covering the case. I've even seen Camille Vasquez, one of Johnny Depp's lawyers. She commentated on the case on one morning show, I believe. But one of the most surprising commentators of all when it comes to this case is actually the BTK serial killer. It's weird, right? I actually talked about this over on my main channel. I think I talked about it a little bit here as well. But the BTK killer, he's spoken out about this case and about Bryan Kohberger on multiple occasions already. Media outlets are reaching out to him for his thoughts on the case. And in many ways, he's become just like one of us YouTubers, or just like one of the people you see on the news. He's an active commentator on this active true crime case, despite the fact that he's a serial killer and he's behind bars. I want you to just stop and let that marinate real quick. Because, our day-to-day lives, sometimes it just goes by so fast. We get so much news thrown at us, and, we got our own things going on as well, and often we don't take the time to really process things. But really stop and think about the fact that we have serial killers behind bars who have now basically become commentators on true crime cases out in the free world. That's where we are at as a society. And that is really weird when you think about it. I think a lot of people, like I said, I think it just blows over people's head because we're so desensitized to all of the stuff going on. But in many ways, the BTK killer, he's given his thoughts on this case multiple times. And he's been reached out to again. And he says that, quote, "I know how he feels," in reference to Bryan Kohberger. Now, what does he mean by that? We're about to find out right now as we hop into this article. BTK serial killer on solitary confinement and Bryan Kohberger. I know how he feels. The BTK killer says he can relate to the loneliness Bryan Kohberger is staring at behind bars, while confirming he never spoke with the criminology student who studied under his true crime co-author. Dennis Rader, the bind, torture, kill, unaliver, spent months in custody awaiting court proceedings, just as the Idaho murder suspect is doing now. Since I spent from February 2005 to April 2005 in a cell by myself, I know how he feels. Very lonely. Rader met with his defense attorney every day, he added, and found ways to pass the time. During frequent meetings with his public defenders, Rader wanted to go through everything prosecutors had on him, even though he had confessed on the day of his arrest, according to his daughter, Carrie Rawson. He was going back and forth between pleading not guilty and guilty, she says. One difference is Dad confessed and seemed relieved, versus Kohberger. He has to feel very alone. Kohberger, according to prosecutors in Pennsylvania, may have waived extradition out of a need to know how investigators established probable cause after the crime. Once in custody, Rader began receiving letters and artwork from strangers. And soon, letters started to come in, he said. I read a lot of the Bible and I wrote poetry. His writings during that time include an infamous missive titled Black Friday, seemingly about his arrest and signed, the suspect. Dad had fan mail very early, and I'm seeing it being sent to Bryan, Rawson said, and art being made, like women are in love with these guys. Kohberger is being held without bail in Moscow, Idaho, the same town where he allegedly snuck into a 6-bedroom home in the middle of the night and ambushed 4 young people. You know, it's sick to think about the fact that Bryan Kohberger is passing his time behind bars by looking at and reading fan mail. Because make no mistake about it, Bryan Kohberger now has a fan base. We actually talked about that in one of my last videos, how Bryan Kohberger's already formed a cult-like following. There's Facebook groups out there who are sympathizing with him. They're raising money to buy him books and put money on his commissary. He's got one woman who claims to be his soulmate who is constantly writing him. And now, for the first time in Kohberger's life, he's getting all of this attention. Now, we didn't hear much from the BTK killer, but the point of this video wasn't as much about what the BTK killer had to say, as opposed to the fact that we are at a point now where he is even brought up in a situation like this. I understand the general public may be saying, hey, this guy reminds me of this, or this crime reminds me of that crime. But then when we get to the point that media outlets are just reaching out to these people, it's like this guy is living vicariously through Bryan Kohberger. And I feel like this is a dangerous, slippery slope, because what we're going to have here, like what I'm saying is, 15 years from now, are news outlets going to be reaching out to Bryan Kohberger so he can give his thoughts on the next killer? Are these horrific, evil people going to get a new breath of life by becoming commentators on true crime cases? Where not only are they getting fan mail and weirdo women reaching out to them to try to marry them in jail, but they're also having media outlets reach out to them. And who knows, maybe these media outlets say, hey, you agree to talk to us, we'll give you a little money here and there. It's like a second wind for these people. And make no mistake about it, I would assume this BTK guy, I would assume he's probably happy that he's getting all of this newfound attention. So I think that as a society, we glorify these people already a little bit too much. Because make no mistake about it, a lot of these serial killers, maybe not necessarily ones from modern day, but a lot of the old school ones have become like rock stars. They've become parts of pop culture. You know, I'm talking Jeffrey Dahmer and people like that. Charles Manson, even though I know you wouldn't necessarily consider him a serial killer, but these people have become big parts of our pop culture. And it's interesting seeing how our society treats these things moving forward. And like I said, it's a slippery slope. You reach out to the BTK killer for his thoughts on this one, and then, where do we go from there? You understand what I mean? But anyway, let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and remember, always remain opinionated.